Margaret, are you in charge tonight?
We're both here tonight, Judy.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, it's 6 o'clock. Is everybody ready?
We are.
Okay, let's do it. Good evening. Welcome. Mike Ray is at work tonight, so hopefully he'll be with us as much as possible in and out. Our student advisors are on summer break, which sounds like a lovely place to be. So we're going to begin tonight with Margaret, I'm going to need some help on my agenda. I see land acknowledgement before Pledge of Allegiance. Are we doing that?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Who is doing that?
Chris
Julie,
is going to.
Julie, do you have that? Can you put that up for me, please?
Oh, yes. Hold on just a sec. Sorry about that.
As Julie's opening that up for us, I will say that as a result of approval of our equity plan, this is one of the items that we had put into the plan and approved. And what it says is that we would do this the first board meeting of each month. And so it is a way of honoring the first people of these lands. And so we are acknowledging that these lands that we gather on is the traditional territory of the Stillaguamish tribe of Indians. And the Stillaguamish people have inhabited these lands and waters since time immemorial, and their ancestors have remained in this territory to this day. The Stillaguamish people have continued to practice the traditional ways of their ancestors of fishing, hunting, and gathering. The Stillaguamish tribe has had these lands and cultural traditions passed on to them by their ancestors who believe that everything has a spirit and they are caretakers of these lands and waters. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, would you please call on the attending people here tonight for attendance?
Director Kelly,
Here.
Director Levesque,
Here.
and just confirming Director Ray, I don't believe is here yet. Director Rawson,
Here.
President Fay,
Here.
Superintendent Sweeting.
Here.
Thank you. And we're going to move on. Could I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make the motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been motion and second to approve the agenda, and Madam Secretary.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levesque,
Aye.
Director Rawson,
Aye.
President Fay.
Aye. Next, could I please have a motion to approve the regular Zoom meeting minutes from June 14th, 2021?
I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes of June 14th as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and second to approve the regular Zoom meeting minutes from June 14th, 2021. Madam Secretary.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levesque,
Aye.
and we see that Director Ray has shown up. Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Rawson,
Aye.
President Fay.
Aye. Thank you, Gina. And next, we'll move right on to recognitions and presentations. This is an exciting moment, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Sweeting.
Yes, I am excited, and I see that Carla Gastineau is here tonight with us. Every year, the WASA, which is the Washington Association of School Administrators, gives each region an opportunity, each school district within each region, the opportunity to honor people that have really shown leadership to support the schools and our students. And this year, Carla and her work as executive director for the Arlington Food Bank has done amazing. She always does amazing things in supporting our students and their nutritional needs and working with us to make sure that the meals are provided, but especially during this COVID time, it has been challenging. And I'm going to invite right now Executive Director Brian Lewis of Operations to say a few words about Carla as well.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, Carla. Nice to see you. One of the first directives all public schools received from the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction at the start of the pandemic in March 2020 was to put into place a program so children could continue to access food services that the school provided pre-pandemic. As Arlington Public Schools put together its plan to meet the superintendent's directive to provide at least 2 meals a day to any child who wanted them, we were grateful that Carla Gastineau reached out to us to offer the partnership of the Arlington Community Food Bank in this effort. That partnership resulted in an estimated 258,000 meals provided by the school and an additional 160,000 individual meals served through the food bank's Meals Till Monday program. All these meals were either delivered on school buses to meal distribution points throughout the district or by pickup at school sites. Ms. Gastineau's tremendous efforts to create and sustain this partnership and organize the Meals Till Monday program certainly meet the vision of the Washington Association of School Administrators Community Service Award. Carla, we are deeply grateful for your work and the work of the Arlington Community Food Bank. And on behalf of Arlington Public Schools in Wausau, we present this recognition to you. Thank you.
And Carla, we do have a certificate for you with your name, and you will receive that shortly. We'll mail that to you. Usually on an annual basis, we have this reception and a lunch for these special people, but we weren't able to do that this year because of the circumstances with COVID. But we just look forward to finding other ways to honor you, but very grateful for you and your leadership. So thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you. As I typed to you, I was really stunned. I absolutely love what I get to do every day. And I'm so grateful for the partnership that we do have with the school district. I love working with you, Chris. It's a great partnership, and knowing you through Rotary before, and getting to work with you more with the school district in my role as the director at the food bank has been great. Meeting and getting to know Brian has been really wonderful. The goal is that no one goes hungry in our communities, and especially kids. And this pandemic just saw, a huge increase. Prior, we were serving about 200 packs a week, and it jumped up to 1,200, and it was just stunning. And, without the city of Arlington and the school together working to make things happen so seamlessly, it wouldn't have happened. And thanks for putting kids first always. That's what it's about.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks for joining us in that task and that mission of putting kids first. Thank you.
Carla, I just want to jump in real quick and say also a thank you. We all know that before children can learn, they have to be fed. And thank you for watching over our children and families and taking care of them. I hope that you've been able to find just a bit of time to step away to refresh and renew yourself. So thank you.
Thank you. Working on that.
Hey,
having foot surgery forced me to have a little vacation here the last few weeks.
Good. Well deserved.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we'll move right on from that to comments from the audience. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone who would like to address the board tonight?
Yes, we do.
All right, then I'm going to go ahead and read the script for audience participation. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public at our meetings, and has therefore set aside a time at regular meetings to hear audience comments. You may speak about an agenda item or a non-agenda topic. This is the only time during the meeting where public comment will be taken. Please listen carefully to these instructions. If you wish to speak to the board during this comment time, please click the raise hand button on the bottom bar in the Zoom window now and leave it raised until called. If you are joined by telephone, press *9 to raise your hand. We will first call on all those who pre-registered to speak. After that, we will call on any other raised hands. Each speaker will be given one opportunity to speak. When your name is called, you'll be temporarily unmuted by the clerk. Please clearly state your name, spelling the last name, and email address unless you have already provided your contact information to the clerk, and keep your comments as brief as possible, 3 minutes or less. The president may interrupt or terminate an individual statement if it is uncivil or exceeds the allotted time. The board does not respond to questions during the business meeting. The board's silence does not signal agreement or endorsement of the speaker's remarks. If you are requesting a response or just prefer to provide comments to the board in writing, please do so through the district website at asd.webnet.edu. Choose administration, school board, contact the board. All right, Julie, we're ready.
Okay, we have 2 people that like to speak tonight, and we do already have their contact information. Our first person is Mark Dubois. And Mark, you should be able to talk.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Mark Dubois, D-U-B-O-I-S. And my concern tonight is what is fast becoming America's new institutional orthodoxy, critical race theory, or CRT, and the infusion of this educational evil into the curriculum of Arlington School District 16. Critical race theory is morally every bit as repulsive as white supremacism, but it's more mainstream, which makes it more dangerous. Should white children be taught that they're irredeemably bad because of the color of their skin? Should Black children be taught that they're victims of systemic racism who can only get ahead if they've been given special privileges based on their skin color? This is a debilitating notion and is promulgated as a core value in CRT, which views everything through the lens of race. Exposing any child to this sort of mental poison borders on child abuse and is corrosive for our entire society. Proponents of critical race theory believe America is inherently a bad place and white Americans, by their very nature, oppress Black Americans. How then are we supposed to live together in a multiracial nation? Critical race theory is simply not compatible with living in a multiracial republic, and teaching it to our children is utterly irresponsible madness. There is at least one school district in the state of Washington that is no longer conducting the business of education out of fear. Chehalis School District has banned the teaching of critical race theory in their classrooms. Their new policy provides that schools will not teach that some students are inherently good and others are bad based on their outward appearance. Furthermore, their district officials declared that political ideology has no place in public schools and that teachers will educate students, not tell them what to think or what opinions to hold. In closing, I would implore the Arlington School District to follow the lead of the many school districts across the country and reject the teachings of these destructive ideologues and keep this school district free from the worst kind of racism and brainwashing that is part and parcel with critical race theory. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for coming to our school board meeting.
Mhm.
Next person that has signed up, Julie?
Okay, we have Britt Soley. And Britt, you should be able to talk right now. Britt, can you hear us?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Last year for me was extremely disappointing. It became very clear there was a lack of communication with parents in an attempt to undermine their religious and political beliefs. Between the political election that was held in the 3rd grade that was timed and votes were tracked, which then caused teachers to not contact parents or respond to them if they were the opposite political viewpoint, between teachers talking about BLM, telling stories that were completely false that they had heard from the media and trying to pass them off as their own, to announcements about Pride Week that didn't even describe what Pride Week was and had my children very confused. None of these events were disclosed to parents. Or that they were going to be talked about, and caused parents to then have to have large conversations with their children to rectify the situations that were had in class, and then caused parents to lose time and energy taken away from their jobs and fun time with their kids to rectify these situations. Last year, more than ever, we saw children fall behind, teachers caring more about impairing political viewpoints on their children than teaching reading, writing, and math. Parents are feeling discriminated against and undermined. What are your plans to rectify this? That's all I got.
Thank you, Britt. Thank you for coming to our school board meeting.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to move on to, oh, I'm sorry, Julie, was there anybody else that had a hand raised?
No, we do not have anybody else.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments from the board on the consent agenda? If not, I'm going to take just 1 minute to acknowledge the fact that when I looked at the personnel report, I saw, which is on the consent agenda, I saw that Wilma Potter had announced her retirement. And I just wanted to thank Wilma for all of her years of work in the Arlington School District, 28 years of those, almost 30. I worked with Wilma at Pioneer a few years ago, and she was someone I always look forward to seeing in the lunchroom. She's a person that is able to brighten your day because of her upbeat and positive attitude. She was always appreciated and welcomed in every position she held, and she will be missed. So shout out to Wilma. Thanks for all of your years with us. So with that, could I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been motioned and second to accept the consent agenda. Madam Secretary, could you call for a vote?
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levesque,
Aye.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Rawson,
Aye.
President Fay.
Aye. Thank you. We'll move right on to new business. The first item is capital project schedule and recommendations, and that will begin with Brian Lewis, followed with Fred and Chris also. I think they're here tonight.
Phew, sorry about that. It took me a minute to catch up. I'm out of practice. So, but thank you very much, directors. Good evening. Fred Owen is with us tonight. Chris Lilly had a prior engagement. He couldn't be here this evening. But we are, I believe that Fred and I can handle your questions if you might have any. What we're going to talk about tonight is a recommendation from the district's facilities advisory committee to change the mix of projects that are funded by the capital levy or by the limited general obligation bond that the district issued to be repaid by the capital levy. And I'm going to real quickly review the authority that's imbued in the board via the resolutions that were adopted to ask the voters for levy support and to issue the limited general obligation bond to be repaid by the levy partially. And after we review the board authority, we're going to talk about the recommendations that we've got that the Facilities Advisory Committee has proposed and ask you for your approval. So there were two resolutions attached to the agenda item from 2019, one from 2019, one from 2020. One was the resolution to authorize the district to go to the voters and ask for their support on a capital projects fund levy. This was done in the February 2020 election in conjunction with the educational programs and operations levy. It was paired together with the capital levy. The second resolution attached to your agenda was from 2020, and that was a resolution authorizing the district to issue limited general obligation bonds to be repaid by the capital levy. And both of these resolutions have language in them that give authority to the board to determine the projects, the order of projects, and to repay for those projects either from the capital levy or from the bond that was issued subsequently. As you know, we were successful with the capital levy election, and we followed that up with issuing a limited general obligation bond to accelerate the cash flows from that levy so we could get started on projects now, because every moment that we wait to perform a project results in additional cost. So now what I'm showing you on this slide is a table that has 5 columns across you can see the labels across the top, the time, the site, the school site in question, the current schedule and mix of projects, and changes that the Facilities Advisory Committee is recommending be made to the current mix of projects, and what source of funding, even though this is a fine point in terms of whether it was paid for by the LGO bond or by the capital levy, since effectively it's the same source. But it is important that we distinguish between these. The first line shows June through August of 2022. That would be next summer. The site under discussion is Eagle Creek Elementary. The current schedule envisions installing a fire suppression system and clocks, upgrade, fire alarm, and DDC controls, which are HVAC related controls at the site. The study performed by the committee over several meetings resulted in a conclusion that it's really most appropriate to install a fire suppression system because of the amount of disruption that would occur with that installation during a time when the building would be modernized. And modernization is a wholesale remodel, basically, of the infrastructure systems inside of the school building. And it is very messy and it is very time consuming. The installation of a fire suppression system could be as equally messy. So it's really, in the conclusion of the committee, most appropriate to do that work when we do a modernization of Eagle Creek. So the recommended change is to change the schedule of the fire suppression system installation to the time of modernization, which has not yet been scheduled, but replace that project with an installation of new floor coverings and continue the installation of upgraded clocks, fire alarm, and DDC controls inside of that building. So what we're asking for board consideration here is to put that installation of the fire suppression system at the time of modernization, and we can reserve an amount of money in the capital projects fund to cover that installation so that we've got funds dedicated, the funds that we would had told the community that we were going to use to install the fire suppression system would have an earmark, so to speak, attached to them in the capital project fund where the money is being held for projects. So those first 3 lines are all about moving the fire suppression system install into the time of modernization and accelerating the installation of the floor coverings from June of 2023 until June through August of 2022. The Eagle Creek principal sits on the committee, sits on the Facilities Advisory Committee, and she has endorsed this plan and this change. And this is what we're asking the board to give us the go ahead to make this change to our schedule as well. So the next project in question is the installation of or the replacement of the surface of the track at Arlington High School. This was not a project that was included in the original project list considered by the board in the adoption of the resolution in 2019. With the advantages that we found in terms of collecting additional state match of about $3 million and the competitive bidding environment that we experienced when we went to bid for a general contractor for the installation of the additions, the construction of the additions at Arlington High School, we found ourselves with sufficient funds to support the installation of a track surface, a new track surface. And it is an important project. It is something that was installed in 2003 with the original construction of the stadium. Its original lifespan was estimated to be at 10 years. So we've exceeded that. We're at year 8, it'll be year 18 by the time, if you approve of this change, by the time we get to installation of the new surface. There have been several repairs made to the track throughout those times. So it's not that we're not taking care of it. It's just exceeded its useful life and it's ready for a replacement, a complete replacement. This is an issue that's not going to go away. We will continue to face this issue. Track is obviously a very popular program amongst our student body and in our community. The track is a well-utilized community resource. So there are merits to having this track surface replaced now while we've got the funding available to us and beginning the planning process for that and to occur in June, between June and August of 2022. We also included a slide with more words rather than presenting it in a tabular or a table format. Basically, what we're asking is to summarize the schedule the installation of the fire suppression system to coincide with building modernization, accelerate the installation of the Eagle Creek floor covering replacement to summer of 2022, and add the Arlington High School track resurfacing project to summer of 2022. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the board's authority to make a change to these this project mix, or any of the projects that we're proposing, any of the changes that we're proposing.
I have one question, Brian. This is Mary.
Yes.
When do you expect to have the Eagle Creek building modernization? How long are we talking about procrastinating our fire suppression system?
That is a question that we don't have an answer to at this time, but we're working on an answer to that question. I have an agenda item later on tonight regarding geographic attendance areas. And one of the things I'm going to mention during that time is acquisition of demographic services to understand where we would be in terms of student enrollment in the future and in the next 20 years. I'm not saying that we would not do the project within the next 20 years, but I'm suspecting it's going to be within 5 years that we would need to look at building a new elementary school to meet the needs of a growing student population. And after that a new elementary school is constructed, then the modernization of Eagle Creek would occur, because that takes about a year to a year and a half to complete. And then when that modernization was complete, we would move, well, let me back up. Once we built a new elementary school, the idea would be that Eagle Creek students would attend the new elementary school. The modernization would occur at the existing Eagle Creek, and then the students would move back into the modernized Eagle Creek Elementary School. And then we would have a redistricting or attendance area change that we would implement to determine which students would go to which school buildings. Now, we're pairing this, and again, I'll mention this during my discussion of the geographic attendance areas. We've completed a portable feasibility study so that we understand where it is that we can place portables at our school buildings throughout the district, at the elementary school buildings, to be more specific. And so that we understand, we need to understand two things. One is, what is our student population going to look like in the future? Because, with the advent of Amazon and the industrial construction that's occurring throughout the district, there has been residential construction accompanying it. our student population mix is going to change, and we need to understand, do we need to build a new elementary school, or do we need to add portables throughout the district? And if we choose to add portables, what would that cost? And where would they be placed? So there's a dual-pronged effort underway to understand when is the best time to do the modernization at Eagle Creek Elementary. So I know that's a lot of background there, Marion. I hope I communicated adequately a response to your question, because basically bottom line is it's underway.
But not in the next couple of years. I was looking for like.
Not in the next, no,
like,
no, not in the next 2 years. I don't see it.
5 years?
I'm sorry.
10 years?
I think 5 years would be a good time frame to expect.
Thanks, Brian, for that very
Would it-
awesome explanation.
Brian, to sort of dovetail on Mary's question, just to throw this in the mix, and I know it's under consideration already, but as we all know, our dear post middle school, I had to bring that in here. Where does that factor in? Because I'm thinking that that funding of that is, kind of outside. That's another kind of another side. But I just wondered, on a timeline, where do you think that would enter into the equation? Because for me, I know we have to meet the demands of continued increased enrollment, but then I also sit there and go, and post still needs addressed. So what does that look like as far as you know?
So that is a question that a proposal would be originated by the Facilities Advisory Committee. That's going to be in our work plan for next year. Just to give you some ideas of calendar, the current capital levy that we're collecting and using to build improvements to our schools, it expires in 2024.
Okay.
And we've got an election coming up in 2023 to ask for voter approval of the renewal of our EP&O levy, our Educational Programs and Operations levy.
Okay.
It would make sense to consider pairing another request to the community for a replacement of post middle school with that.
And that's
EP&O
November of
request.
2023, you're thinking, for that dual?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said if we're pairing it up, that's what you're saying. You're saying we're already going to be, we would ask for a continuation, and that's the 2023 ballot. So that would make sense so that we're 2021. So 2 years away. We're 2021. His eyes are
I'm
rolling.
trying to do the calendar in my head right now. 21,
think-
22, 23,
I think
24.
it's
So we would
24,
go to the
Brian.
voters in 24. Yeah.
Right, November of 24, or February
February. Mhm.
2024.
Wow. Oh,
So
February
that's
24.
when we would be correct.
Okay.
And that would be, our current calendar for the construction projects it extends through 2024. So we would just be finishing up our levy funded projects. And
Yeah. Okay. So it's a ways out, which makes me, I'm thinking elementary parents are already calculating out what will that school look like when my kids are in middle school, and it could very well be in the middle of middle school. So, okay, that gives me perspective. And yes, definitely, I would like to hear what that's going to be when you convene with your group, the facilities, just kind of seeing what that looks like, because I know I've been always excited about the proposals for what that could look like. And especially with the virus we're living in, and the modernization of a building that could provide better airflow, maybe that would be great. Thank you, Brian.
absolutely. Thank you.
Brian, thank you so much and please thank the committee for accelerating Eagle Creek floor covering, because it is, I am sure it is way past its lifespan, seeing as how it was the original carpeting that's been there since that building was built. So I'm excited to sit on clean carpeting when I'm in that building. So thank the committee. I'm excited. So are we ready for a motion on this? Comments from anybody else? Nope. Could I have a motion to approve the recommended project order changes?
I move we approve the recommended project order changes.
A second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the recommended project order changes. Madam Secretary.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levac,
Aye.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Rossin,
Aye.
President Fay.
Aye, thank you. Next, we'll move on to item B under new business, academics and student well-being updates and planning for the 2021-22 school year. And that goes to Dr. Sweeting.
Yes, I was just getting my slideshow going here for us. Start from the beginning. So in giving an update about, we're transitioning to instead of calling this the reopening schools, because we are reopening schools, we have reopened and we're going to continue. It's focused on the academic and student well-being plan updates and planning for 21-22. Part of the academic and student well-being plan has to do with this summer right now. This summer, we are intervening and providing opportunities for students. And so here I've given a listing of all of the summer school opportunities that have been made available to students. The first one is English Learners STEM Camp that took place at each elementary school from June 14 to June 18. And so that took place, and great opportunity for our students where English is their second language, and for them to have some intervention and time to focus outside of the regular school year. Next, the literacy camp is for elementary, and it is still in place, taking place. It started on June 29th, and it is I think Friday is the last day for this week. So excited about that opportunity for elementary students, and it has the capacity of almost up to 200 students. And so just excited to hear a report. The team that is supporting this, there are leaders who are leading these efforts, Carl Olson, Brenda Booth, Marilee Herman, and Will was supporting before he left, Will Nelson. We will provide an update in September, maybe early October, about the results. So just to let the board know on that. The books on the bus and math on the bus, it's going into August, and Brenda Booth is helping lead this opportunity for our students. We did stop this on there was one day where we restricted this activity when it was very hot. It was a very hot day, and so we restricted basically all the summer school opportunities for most, because we didn't want students on the buses, when it was so hot. We have at the high school level credit retrieval and advancement, great opportunity, which is at no cost to each of the families and their students. And this is the last day will be Friday. Extended school year will end next week, and this is an opportunity for those students that have been identified with individual education plans that need to have extended school year intervention. And then the 8th to 9th grade transition, that is been in place too, and going forth, it's focused on project-based learning activity. And at my when I had last asked about the number of students, it was around 80 students that had made indication that they were interested. So I look forward to sharing with you the results of these opportunities. So all of these have, in the academic and student well-being plan, these are definitely connected to that. And so I just wanted to share those with you. Next, I wanted to just touch briefly on the July update from the CDC and the Department of Health about the new guidance for the COVID-19 response. And I'm not going to really go deeply into this. I'm going to just pick a couple of areas, because we are still trying to discern this. We are actually still waiting for some guidance from Washington State, because they are evaluating. But the first thing I wanted to mention is that these kinds of things, these guidances we are using, and they're effective for summer school. So they're being put in place as we have students on campus. So of course, we continue. We do not want people to come to work or students to come to campus who are not well. So we're still following all the rules and guidelines with the health department about using our care rooms for isolating students that may have those symptoms, and then making sure that they're quarantined according to what the health department has guided them and directed them to do. The physical distancing, 3 feet in most classroom settings, but if it's an activity like eating or where like PE and those kinds of things, and in common areas, 6 feet is the guideline, and between adults is the guideline. The next one is a question about facial coverings and masks. And what I want to point out for this is the language here from bullet 1 and bullet 2 is exactly out of the guidance that we received from the health department. And it's hard to understand between 1 and 2 what they're really meaning. So the first bullet says, all school personnel, volunteers, visitors, and students must wear a facial covering or something that's acceptable when indoors, regardless of vaccination status. But then if you read the next bullet says fully vaccinated staff must wear facial coverings indoor if, I have to move my little cursor, if children under the age of 18 are present, but they do not need to wear facial coverings indoor if no children are present and vaccination status has been verified. So we are waiting for some clarification between these 2 bullets, because we want to understand, what's the difference between bullet 1 and bullet 2? At this time, for summer school, we're following bullet 1, because students are present and staff are wearing facial coverings, and so are the students. We also want to have some understanding about what does it mean to verify vaccination status. We don't understand as a system yet, what does that mean? And so that we need clarification from the health department. They are working on this. They are evaluating this. All superintendents received an email from the state superintendent on Friday saying that the health department is evaluating this. And we are anxious to get their answers to some of our questions. If you're outdoors, facial coverings are not required, regardless of your status. Unless you're in a very crowded situation, then it is wise that either you maintain that 6 feet of distance or the facial coverings is recommended, but outdoors is different than indoors. So these are just some components of the most recent. This is like last week guidance that came our way. As you know, and I think you've heard about this in the media, our infection rate is really stabilizing at a low rate. It's down there. And if I shared all the other charts on the health department's website, which there are many, it shows like hospitalizations and those kinds of things are going in the right direction as well. And so this is good news. I wanted to make a comment tonight that today I was notified that a baseball camp that has taken place in our district, that there have been some positive cases identified or case identified. And so the health department is working this through right now. So we don't know all the details or all of the next steps, but I just wanted the board to be aware that there was some a positive case or cases, and that we're working through with their health department is doing what they need to do to either quarantine groups or numbers of students. So just heads up there. Planning for the fall, for next fall, we are planning for 5 days of full-time in-person instruction. And we've talked about this already, and we have not changed that course. We are keeping the online option of Arlington Online available for K-12. We are waiting for clarification from Washington Department of, well, it says education, I bet it should say health, regarding adjustments in the health and safety requirements. We need to know, and I think this will evolve over time. We had a meeting with the health department on Tuesday, and there really was, it was less than 10 minutes long. So there wasn't a lot of information yet that could be shared with superintendents. So we're waiting for clarification. We are right now actively, Cabinet is reviewing staffing needs for additional support for social emotional learning, behavior, and academic support. So we have asked the buildings through the leaders to tell us what the needs are and what additional support, whether it be through paraeducators, other certificated staff, who that might be. And we have a list, and we've been busy going down the list and saying, within the budget that we have, what can we approve? And we've identified like the ESSER 2 funds, we've identified the ESSER 3 funds, and we know that we can use money to support these needs. So we are making decisions, and we will be notifying buildings by the end of July about those things that we want them to move forward with. And that's it. What questions do you have?
Hey, Dr. Sweeting, it's Mike. So I see also recently, several days ago, the CDC came out with recommendations that vaccinated teachers and students do not need to wear masks indoors. I was curious if you were aware of that and what we're doing to kind of investigate that or discuss that with the State Department of Health, Snohomish County Health, and OSPI to see if we can follow CDC recommended guidelines when school opens in the fall.
Yeah, no, we need clarification. That's what I'm waiting for, Mike, is that I know on Friday, the CDC, put out that information. And what happens is then our state translates that. So our Washington Department of Health will review that information, I hope quickly, from the CDC, and then give us guidance. And so they translate it. That's the process. And hopefully it'll be soon.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for that report, Chris. I'm going to look forward in September or early October for that summer school report because it's so exciting to see how many kids that we were able to address this summer, and I'm thrilled. And a big thank you to Carl Olson for helping manage that, and I'm excited to hear the reports of how the kids performed that during that time. Thanks. Okay, we'll move on then to new business, item C, which is the 2021-2022 student fee schedule. And that's with Gina Zutenhorst.
So, good afternoon. I'm here, Gina Zutenhorst, and getting ready to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. I'm here to represent for board approval the 21-22 student fee schedule. And Board Policy and Procedure 3520 provides the circumstances and guidelines for charging fees and requires the schedule of rates and fees to be brought to the board for their approval each year. Aside from fundraiser type items, the fees are mostly for supplementary or optional type items, and they're not intended to exceed the costs. Where fines are involved, they're intended to cover replacement of lost or damaged property or materials. And in the past, the board has shown commitment to removing student barriers and increasing equity, and has continued possible elimination of fees where possible. And so we always like to mention that because it's progress and where we've been and where we are now. In 2019-20, the board approved the discontinuation of charging athletic participation fees. And instead, we infused the extracurricular programs with additional funding from the general fund in lieu of charging those athletic participation fees. In addition, some fees have been temporarily reduced or eliminated during the 2021 school year and 21-22 school years due to the unique challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. So changes from the previous schedule include, I'm going to scan it down to this section where this is listed. The Student, Child and Nutrition Services Department will be providing breakfast and lunch meals free of charge for all students per OSPI federally approved waivers. So the department does still recommend an increase of 10 cents for paid meal prices, which would go into effect only if the waivers were discontinued. And these are based on the department cost analysis and OSPI federal guidelines. So they are included in this schedule, but we do, for all intents and purposes, believe that we're going to be doing free all year long. The next thing that's been taken off of here actually is we removed something, sale of PE uniforms. Those have been removed from the schedule. It's my understanding that the middle schools are not doing the logoed wear, not making that a requirement. So they are not on the list. T-shirts have been for various activities where they're doing a t-shirt to go along with that. We increased the range. It was listed at $5 to $10, but it's been pointed out that it's kind of hard to get t-shirts at those rates. So we have the range from $5 to $20 range, just to make sure that that's an authorized item on the list. For ASB cards at the high school, they were being sold at a reduced rate for 2021. It was $35 instead of $45, but they will resume the pricing of $45 going into 21-22 for ASB cards. And then Arlington High School yearbooks as well. That's back down here, I think. Yearbook, high school. They have increased their range from $60 to $65 now to $60 to $70. And then tuition, the next change that is listed on here is in regards to tuition. And again, we get to put the words free. And if you've heard the commercials on TV lately, they say free, free, free. I don't know what it's for, but I get to say free, free, free on this schedule for summer school tuition, online learning, and portfolio learning. All of those credit tuition-based fees are going to be given for free. And that's all the changes I have of note. So the board has this fee schedule attached to in board docs for its review at any time. And I'm available for any questions.
If there are no questions, could we have a motion to approve the 2021-22 student fee schedule?
I move that the board approves the 2021 to 22 student fee schedule as presented.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motioned and seconded to approve the student fee schedule for the 2021-22 school year. Madam Secretary?
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levesque,
Aye.
Director Ray. Director Ray. You must have had to step away. Director Rawson
Aye.
and President Fay.
Aye. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the withdrawal prior to graduation annual report, policy 3123. And Dr. Sweeting, that's for you.
All right, this is a report that is an annual requirement based on policy 3123, and it's notifying or informing the board what is the status of students who have withdrawn or left school. And so it's a requirement of that the board is aware of those reasons why. And so its focus is to help students and to support students who are at risk for dropping out. Are there things that we can do, that we can pay attention to, that would keep students in school? And so it's also a requirement that we are able to say why a student left. And so we document those reasons why a student, if we know them, we try to know what those reasons are. We work hard, the staff at the schools, there are staff that work on calling homes, they call, maybe they've heard a student is withdrawing or transferring to another school and they haven't heard or had records requested from that new school. They will call the school to find out if the student has arrived. So the recorded reasons are maybe the student left because they decided to work full-time and not go to school, or medical, or they've moved, or attendance, no show. And what that means is after a student does not come to school for 20 consecutive days, we cannot legally, according to OSPI, count them any longer. So we have to withdraw them. So we try to work really hard to find them so that we keep them connected, and in some cases try to connect them to Open Doors. Say you can work, but we can also connect you to Open Doors program. This year, for this report, there were reason codes for 9 students who withdrew before graduation that were unknown. So we don't know why that they withdrew. So, the year before, we had a reason for each one. So we need to be able to know what that reason is in order for us to problem solve and mitigate and try to keep the students here. So this year we had a total of 44 students who withdrew before graduation. So 22 were from Arlington High School, Weston High School, and 22 from Open Doors. And last year we had 50 withdraw. So I mean, there's less, but we don't want any students that would withdraw. The next couple of slides is by the student age and the reason why they left. So you can see that, for example, at the age of 18, we had 16 students withdraw. And the reasons for that, mostly because they transferred. Transferred was the second highest. The other highest was they didn't show. So we had to withdraw them after not showing for 20 days. So this, those 7 students, we need to know why. Was there something that we could have done differently? Now, and also the unknown, the students, the 2 and the 1, 18-year-old and the 19-year-old, why? And then we had 1 student that was working. On the next slide, it's for Open Doors. So that slide was for Arlington High School and Weston, and this is for Open Doors. And you can see that at the age of 19, the highest number there was because of no-shows. And so this is the report that I wanted to share with the board. We can do better, but we did decrease the number of students that withdrew from 50 to 44. And Will Nelson, on his way out in preparing this report for us, this friend of his is saying, "What questions do you have?" and is raising his hand or her hand, whichever. Any questions? And there's no action here. This is just informing the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. There are no questions. Thank you for that report. We'll move on to item E, annual review of geographic attendance areas, and that's to Brian Lewis.
Thank you, President Fay. Board Policy 3130 states that the Board of Directors will annually review the geographic attendance area designated for each building in the district. As population and enrollment shifts within the district, changes in attendance areas or transfer of students may become necessary. By mid-May of each school year, the next year's estimated enrollment should be forecast for each attendance area, and this is all part of Board Policy 3130. Attached for reference to the board agenda are maps of the school attendance areas. The school feeder structure is that Eagle Creek and Kent Prairie Elementary students feed into Post Middle School. Pioneer and President's Elementary students feed into Howler Middle School. And middle schools feed into Arlington High School or Weston High School. And an easy mnemonic trick for you to use to remember this is P's go to H. Pioneer and President's Elementary students go to Howard Middle School. The other 2 schools go to Post. Staff is not making recommendations for changes to attendance areas at this time. Those kinds of changes require an attendance area study, which has not been accomplished. I have received a proposal from a demographer that Lakewood School District uses for these kinds of services to perform this kind of study for us. Their recommendation at this point is that they're not going to be able to access Census 2020 data until October. That would provide them with the kind of information that they need to give us a full study. So I do expect to continue the conversation with the demographer until we arrive at an understanding of the kinds of services that we need and when they would be performed, which would be sometime within this calendar year. That demographic study would pair with the portable feasibility study that I mentioned earlier to help the Facilities Advisory Committee to come up with a recommendation regarding pursuit of new school buildings within the school district or potential changes to attendance areas. The attendance area change is generally accomplished via a community partnership. It's not something that the school district does or imposes unilaterally. There is work with the community that we need to perform prior to making any kinds of decisions about this. So it's a work in process. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Brian, do we plan to leverage our work with the demographer and the census data to also accomplish our district recounts, given the fact that this is a census year? I think I remember we have to relook at where the districts are for the 5 school board members.
Yes, that is correct.
So we'll kind of do both at the same time. We'll be looking at not only the schools, but also the districts as well.
Yes, the services we're looking for are enrollment projections into the future based on different scenarios that we'll envision, and then the redistricting, or the necessity for redistricting director districts. Those are the 2 work products that I would expect to gain from a demographer.
Got it. It's both. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Brian. There are no further questions. Thank you for being so on top of our future and keeping track of what we need to keep track of. So then we'll move on to item F, Public Information Program Report, Policies 4000 and 4040 from Gary Sable.
Good evening, directors. Gary Sable, Director of Communications, and I'm here to talk about the Public Information Program. Can you all see my screen? Great, thank you. Okay, so let me do a slideshow here. Okay. So this is an annual update for Policy 4000, the Public Information Program. And essentially what Policy 4000 does is talk about the communication between the district and the community. And there are a number of ways that we communicate between the district and our stakeholders, not only the community, but certainly our families and staff as well. And I've listed here a couple of the ways that we communicate. And this is actually listed in the procedure for policy or procedure 4000. The superintendent's annual report. This includes a lot of information about the happenings of the district, and this is produced by Ms. Zutenhorst, Department in Finance. We also have a number of press releases that we share with media in our region, so they're aware of what's happening in the district. And because of these press releases, we do get different media coverage. And this past year, we've actually had an increase in coverage. And I imagine it's probably due to the pandemic, because we were kind of ahead of the game in our area in some cases. And so the media was very interested in how we were reopening schools and doing that very methodically. We also increased the number of surveys we sent out to not only our families and community members, we also sent some to students as well. And then, of course, as you know, our Voices Opportunities, those have been happening for many years. And that's another way that we communicate between the district and the community. The other parts of the policy talk about how district communication cannot be used to endorse political campaigns. And so basically, as you know, we have a separate committee that is, if you will, kind of the pro for these. The district can only give factual information about any campaigns that are running. We can't, be for or against. We have to be very unbiased there. So again, it's just the information. And then every year we also share the discipline data with the ACE committee. So that was also in policy 4000. Are there any questions about policy 4000 before I move into policy 4040? Okay, I'm going to 4040. So essentially, this is again another report that we give annually to the board. Essentially, it lets the board and our community know that the public does have access to district records. There are, I mean, I could go through all these. It would take the whole night probably to go through all the different regulations that govern that. But just the bottom line is we do have records, and there are steps if a community member or parent would like to request records, we could do that. And you can see the number of requests that we received, over the years. It's not a huge amount, but it's just my department. So most of the requests I can handle just by department. Other ones are very in depth, and it involves multiple departments that assist me with that. So yeah, so far this year we're on track to about anywhere up to 20 per year about that. And to that end, I've actually applied for a grant through the Washington State Archives, and this will help streamline our public records request tracking process, if you will. So that's something that we have. So that's what I have for that. Are there any questions about policy 4000 or policy 4040? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for keeping us up to date. We'll move on to item G, Washington State Auditor's Office Interagency Data Sharing Agreement 2021 to 2024, and that's with Mrs. Zutenhorst.
Hello again. Let me get to share my screen. Good afternoon. Gina Zutenhorst, Executive Director of Financial Services, here to share with you about this interlocal agreement that has been proposed before you. Basically, this is pretty routine item of business. It's new though, and it is in response to the legislature this year. They passed ESSB 5432, cybersecurity and data sharing in Washington state government. So this has created the need to do these data sharing agreements, and it'll be required for state and local governments that are sharing data. So that includes data that is exchanged during the district's audits. So this agreement formalizes the steps that are already in existing practice to protect our data that is exchanged with the state auditor's office during our audits. So that's what this interlocal agreement is all about. Are there any questions?
If there are no questions, could I have a motion to accept the Washington State Auditor's Office Interagency Data Sharing Agreement from 2021 to 2024?
I move that we approve the Washington State Auditor's Office Interagency Data Sharing Agreement 2021 through 2024.
A second.
Thank you. The motion's been made and seconded to approve Washington State Auditor's Office Interagency Data Sharing Agreement for 2021 to 2024. Madam Secretary?
Director Kelly?
Aye.
Director Levesque?
Aye.
Director Ray, I believe, is still out. Director Rawson?
Aye.
President Fay?
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item H, financial outlook, and back to Gina Zutenhorst.
Yes, and I don't think I need to introduce myself again, but I'm ready to share with you our most up-to-date financial outlook. And can you all see that? My PowerPoint up on the screen. I'm going to try to make it a little bigger. Okay, so here we are. We have been talking about our financial outlook every month. And so I want to remind you, my next agenda item is to be talking about next year's budget. So we're a bit of a blend right now because this financial outlook, we are still in this year, and this is our current year looking outward. So with that, I'll get started. financial health of the district. We've had our financial challenges and we should probably have these memorized by now, but it's about the school budgets that were built on full enrollment, and enrollment has been down by about 450 students to 500 students. That drives our apportionment, and other funding was reduced as a result. Transportation ridership as well, reduced because of that. And the fact that we were in a hybrid model as well. Child nutrition services meal counts were also greatly reduced, and we received additional federal funding, but I don't believe it's fully enough to cover all of the costs of operations. And we've had additional costs for COVID-19 and remote learning. So in addition, we talk about our financial positives because we do have a lot to be thankful for, and that is our capital levy. We have our 4-year educational programs and operations levy. We're very thankful to our voters for that. And we are the glad recipients as well of enrollment and transportation stabilization funding, which is really quite beneficial, coming to the rescue for our fund balance, especially where we were going for this fiscal year. Federal ESSER funds are on the horizon. We have ESSER 2 funds of 1.6 million and ESSER 3 funds of 3.3 million. And we also have a healthy fund balance from previous years coming into this year for such a thing as this to help us stabilize ourselves going into from this year and into future years. You've heard Chris talk about our ESSER 2 and 3 funds and the planning that is going on around that. The district will be using a combination of higher staffing levels and service levels, and also some new costs that are going to be coming to enrich and accelerate and support learning. So again, we've got the costs listed there for what our ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds are for Arlington. And then we've got our tool, our OSPI financial indicators tool. And I have done another update to this. We've been looking at this together each month and looking at the weighted scores and our history across five or so years. The cut score on here is 1.75. In the middle, it says cut score 1.75. That would be, if we got to that level, then we would be considered on financial warning by OSPI. Now, as you can see, we are not in the 1.75 range, and we are estimated, this is the part that I've updated, the yellow box on the right, we are estimated to be around the 3.0 range. The last chart that we looked at of this, it was in the 2.8 range. So I've again updated it as the facts become more known and more solid. And this is where I believe we are at based on how we've updated that. So that is a beneficial picture, again, for this year. But looking at our forecast, I've done some updates on this as well for better known factors. And we are still coming in at a higher than expected fund balance for 2021. But our forecast still shows us coming in very close to our minimum fund balance target in the out years, in the next budget year and the next 2 years after that. This assumes that we are having a reduction of expenditures, though, in order to accomplish that in these out years. You see that drop, and this is where I want to again caution, this is today in this year looking outward, and then we will look at budget development and what that chart shows us for in a bit going, and it takes us out another year. But you can see that 88,000 goes down to 85,000. Those are assuming some reduced expenditures. I'm also trying to look at enrollment in here and roughly gauging revenues based on enrollment. And so I have made some rough increases, and in that the third year here, 2023, 24, we are putting it back to close to what we were prior to having our reductions from the COVID pandemic. So we also may have some safety net and ESSER 2 funds to be claimed in 2021. And so this may bring our fund balance, I've got it listed as 10.6. It may be closer to 11 or 11.5 million. So within that working forecast, again, it assumes reduced budgeted revenues because of enrollment from our prior forecasts that you have looked at when we first started. And it assumes reduced budgeted expenditures as well. So I just want to always caution that these minimum fund balances targets that we're looking at and coming in within that and being in compliance does still assume that we are making some careful reductions in future years, but it really does depend on that if those factors stay as they are. Sorry, let's see. Transportation. The budget does authorize and gives authority to transfer 250 to the Transportation Vehicle Fund. And the board has understood and maintained a commitment to the need to maintain the plan for bus replacement, which in turn pays dividends in that it continues the funding infrastructure for future years replacement of buses. So that is an important thing to maintain, and the financial health of the district supports that we move forward with the transfer, and that would be initiated in July of 2021. The last couple of slides, I have talked with you about the FEMA funding, that we had made some claims there in hopes of receiving some reimbursement from the Federal Emergency Management. And we've made a claim for $150,000, and we believe that one is going to be paid, and we're waiting for those, but it takes a long time. We had another $80,000 claim that we submitted, and we since were told that they changed the rules again. They had recommended us to claim these costs, and then they told us, sorry, the rules changed, so they're not eligible. So what's left on the table is $150,000, and we will be glad for any bit of support for reimbursement of those costs. And as we've talked about, you've seen this slide multiple times, but it's a summary and a reminder of the COVID-related costs that we have experienced both last year and this year. And with that, that is our financial outlook. Are there questions?
Gina, back on slide 6. The forecast that you're showing for 2023, 2024. So that's basically 3 years from now, from a school year perspective, 2 years from now.
3 years.
3 years from now. So 3 years from now, from a school year perspective, we're still not expected to be back up to where we were pre-COVID. Is that what that number is saying?
That's what that number says. That doesn't mean that that's not what will be, because, you know, I am not a demographer, and those numbers are all very much skewed from historical but if I try to measure a consistent trajectory to going towards an increase, this was the slow getting back to. Yes.
Got it. Okay. So, and if our numbers were to return back to where they were sooner than 2023, then that would mean additional revenue to
yes, it
offset.
Would. Any kind of reduction would be helped by additional revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
To the extent that and we'll talk more about that in the next one too.
We'll wait till I'll keep my questions for the next one. Thank you.
Okay.
And then Gina will move right on to the next one, and I'm going to save any questions until you're done also with item I, budget development briefing.
All right, let's see. I've been so quick to get those pulled up. Now let's see if I can get this final one pulled up just as quickly. That one. Looking. Sorry. Here it is. Now I can share. Can you see budget briefing up there? Awesome. Let me get that maximized. Oops, went to the other side. Interesting. Okay, sorry, I can't get it to go full screen on this screen. It's on my other screen, so that's okay. I guess you can see the slides that are coming on the left-hand side. Okay. So, been looking forward to this meeting. A lot of work has gone into the culmination of the documents that are attached to your board plates. And we always start with the district mission. Our district mission is to educate, prepare, and inspire students to graduate and see their full potential as lifelong learners. And it is further defined and articulated in our strategic plan. We will secure quality resources, people, time, money, and property, and align these resources to support equitable learning and achievement for students by making decisions using an equity lens and data. Here are the 3 subsets within Strategic Plan Goal 3, which is where budget mostly fits under. But perhaps the most compelling articulation of what Arlington Public Schools is about is contained in these comprehensive values that have been developed around the budget process and are in Board Policy 6000. So let's dig into our F195, our draft budget. This is a summary that F195 is the OSPI required reporting structure for school districts in Washington State. So we refer to our budget as the F195. The budget includes 5 major funds. We have our general operating fund, which is the biggest piece of the puzzle. We have our capital projects fund. We have our debt service fund. We have our ASB fund and our transportation vehicle fund. And these are legally defined separate entities that must be segregated according to the state accounting manual. And so let's talk a little bit more about that. And this is just a definition of each fund. I won't read that to you, but it's there for you should you wish to read it. General Fund 21-22 budget. We will talk about the summary here. This is at the beginning of the F195. This summary data is contained there. And as you can see, we for our next year's budget, we anticipated that we may come in at about 11.5 million. Our revenues would be about 84.6 million, which is a 0.5% down from what we previously budgeted last year. And I'll tell you more about those details within that, what makes that up. Where our expenditures are about 88 million, which is about 1 million more than we budgeted last year. We've still budgeted to do our transfer to the transportation vehicle fund. And that puts us at an ending fund balance of about 7.8 million if you round up. Our certificated and classified employee staff counts we're maintaining. It does show a minor decrease on classified employees, but that is not a decrease per se so much as it is last year. There were more budgeted positions. And so this is what is coming in right now in our F195 through the HR module for the staffing. Our enrollment, it shows the breakout where we budgeted our enrollment to be for 2021 was a total of 5,715. Our actual for 2021 was about 5,237. So you see that the difference there. Our budget for 21-22, we are putting our enrollment at pretty equal to where we were now. And keep in mind, this is based on our February when we're needing to make those decisions, even though it's a little bit hard to do that and hard to put that out there right then. It's very important to beginning the process of things that we need to start to put in place. So that was initially what our enrollment is set at. Very minor increase from where we were ended the school year.
Gina, do you want questions throughout or at the end?
Well, you may definitely go ahead and jump in, and then if it seems like I'll cover it later, I'll jump in and say that.
Okay, so just back on slide 9.
Yes.
So the differences here are shown, at least in the first two, for the general fund summary and the staff counts. Those are the differences between the budgeted amounts.
Yeah.
When will we actually have the actual for 2021, so we can compare that to the budgeted 2021-22 and see a difference there? Because I know that, you know, things change and that we don't close the books until a certain time when we actually would have actuals for 2021 versus those budgeted numbers. But those budgeted numbers are, you know, already 18 months old. So
Right.
you know, so I just want to make sure that we're at some point that budget 2021 is an 18-month-old number that now will be updated once we close the books.
Yeah. Yes and no, because I don't do those numbers as part of fiscal year end. Those
So
are
it's
just
January
expenditures.
next year
but-
when we finally get those.
We could actually, HR can generate that data of exactly how our certificated employees as of the last month of the year, the FTE, but I don't have that. I'm sorry, I'm not answering that very well.
No,
But
that's
yes,
all right.
we-
I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
when we see a difference in the dollar amount and we see a percentage difference, it's a percentage compared budget to budget, not actuals to budget.
Yeah.
And at some point, those budgeted numbers that
Yeah.
are in 2020 and 2021 will become real numbers that we could compare to the budgets at a future date.
Okay. I think that's more staffing conversations.
Well, up above as well, where it says revenues and expenditures, the revenues for 2021 that was budgeted, that's not what our revenues are actual for 2021.
Right.
Right? They're
Yeah.
actually much lower, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't our revenues be much lower for if we looked at the actuals for 2021?
Yes. And that's what we, at our fiscal year end presentation, will show that budgeted versus actual for 2021.
Got it. And so I guess that's my question. When is that presentation?
That one will be in October.
October. Okay.
October, November is because we close out October 25.
That's what I was looking for.
Makes us a bit
October,
different.
November, we'll have the final numbers for what we actually did in 20
Yes.
and 21. Okay. Thank you.
And maybe I can make a note to try to bring our classified and certificated FTE numbers.
Well, listen, it's very helpful down at the bottom where you actually see the enrollment and you can actually see the actual for 2021. So
Yeah.
anytime we can put, you know, even if they're preliminary and not finalized numbers for 2021 in the deck, it's just easy to compare actual to budget versus
Sure.
budget to budget because the budget numbers are 18 months old.
Yes, indeed. And we're lucky with enrollment, we can do that because June is when that ends. So we know.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so moving to the next. Talking about our fund balance, the beginning balance in 2021, it was 12 million, and that was higher than 1920. Expenditures are also approximately 2 million less than expected, and that was creating a higher fund balance for 2021. And that was due to COVID-19 impacts, but also because medical benefit and sub estimates impacted fund balance coming into 2021. And so we are having a consistent with a planned spend down of excess fund balance. The 2021 expenditures exceed revenues as expected. But our ending fund balance for 2021 is still expected to exceed minimums, but future years will require adjustments to sustain operations and maintain appropriate reserves. So you'll hear that said repeatedly as we go through my presentation today. So what is included in this year's budget? Well, salary increases are included. This is not a set number. I want to stress that this is only an estimate. It does not indicate anything other than using something so that we have something built into the budget, at least something built into the budget to estimate salary costs. I want to stress that because our negotiations for future year contract are underway. And so we don't know that number. But we do know for PSE that they are at a 2.5% increase. And for some of the other groups got that as well, the non-represented. And directors are at a 2% for AAA and directors. So the other things that is included in these numbers is staying the course with investments that we've made in programs and classrooms with higher staffing levels. So our methods of staffing would have been generating lower numbers of staff based on enrollment, but we have maintained the higher level of staffing that we initially had, that higher number of enrollment to generate higher levels of staffing. So just keeping that in mind, we've kept that investment. We have ESSER funding to support class size, reopening, COVID-related costs and impacts on operations. So this is going to be helpful to us. And we've budgeted the transfer for $300,000 to the Transportation Vehicle Fund. And in past, we had talked about doing $800,000, but we are trying to be conservative and careful as we go along. So we're doing $300,000 instead of $800,000.
Gina, one quick question here. While we don't know what that 2.5 is, that's just a plug for an estimate. There is a floor that is mandated that we do know. Is that right? Do we know what that number is yet? The IDP for that was part of McCleary? Yes,
IPD is 2%. So the 2% plus 5% is what we have used for an estimate. Okay, PSE's was, their contract was IPD plus 0.5%. So that one we did know 2.5% for them because IPD is 2%.
Got it. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you. Our excess levy summary, this is a page right there in the F-195 document. It's required to be put in there, and it's a place where it provides documentation because it goes along with what we certify to the county. General fund levy will be 9.2 million, and our capital fund levy is going to be 6.149553. That agrees to the resolution that was originally passed for both of those levies. And now let's dig into the details of our revenues and expenditures. Here's our general fund revenues. This is a pie chart version, a pie chart graphic to show our revenues. Trying to catch up with my notes. So the green, state general purpose, and the orange, state special purpose, makes up 78% of our revenues. Local taxes, the blue, 11%. And local non-tax and other funds is a very small percentage. Our federal dollars fund 9% of our, it's 9% of our revenues. I want to share that that is a much higher percentage than it has been in prior years, and that is due to ESSER funding, as well as the food and nutrition support for the federal food program for our students. So that's the pie chart look. And then here's the dollar chart look. And when we look at year end, you'll have a budgeted column and an actual column, a difference in a percentage. But for the purposes of the budgeted revenues, we're just looking at budget to budget. You can see that there is a decrease, and that is largely driven by decreased enrollment. But the ESSER fund program is in this federal special purpose category here. And can you see my cursor as I drag it across? Okay, yeah. It's my pointer. That shows where the ESSER funds come in, but also the federal food program funding is in there too.
Where's levy equalization?
The LEA is in the state general.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now we've got our pie chart of our general fund expenditures, the pie chart graphic. The green and the light orange are making up our regular instruction. So that's 58% of the budget. Purple here is support services. The darker brownish orange is special education, that's 15%. And then these little slices over here are more of the other specialized programs that we have, comprehensive programs, compensatory education, career and technical, CTE, which also is called vocational, and those other instructional programs. And we'll look at this also in the version of the numbers themselves. And there they are. That's the 88 million that we are budgeting to have in expenditures. And that is a 1 million increase over prior year. You can see in our main category, regular instruction, that there is a $2.2 million drop in what we're budgeting for expenditures. But that's because we're budgeting the offset of that is over in federal special ESSER, a portion of that. And I just want to caution that some of these are pretty set, but because this is a draft, we are still trying to make sure that all of those certificated staff that are budgeted are in the right pocket to the program to which they actually belong, to which they're going. So there may be a little bit of shifting between these numbers and the next round that you will look at. But overall, the numbers should not change drastically. And we can talk about any changes in the next one. And so our next slide, we take another look at this because this is by program. And then this is by what type of activity is happening. So this is teaching and support, school and administration, central administration, and other support activities. And each category below includes all the costs that are associated with that activity. So when we talk about teaching and support, it's all the materials, supplies, equipment, contractual services, and professional development in addition to salary and benefits. We talk about school administration and central administration, the same thing. It's not just people, it's all of the office and things and subscriptions and things like that that goes along with it. So that's just a different look at the 88 million. The slide before it, 88 million by program. This is by activity.
Gina, can you let the board know why the central administration, there is such a large amount there?
Yes, our insurance, our Washington Schools Risk Management Insurance bill, we have been hearing for quite a bit. The insurance horizon costs are increasing. So we have quite a significant cost in that area for ourselves as well. So we did have to increase our budget by about 400,000 for insurance. And here's another look at our expenditures, 88 million again. And now it's broken out not by program or by the type of thing, but by certificated salaries, classified salaries, benefits, supplies and materials, purchased services, travel, and capital outlay. And again, we're still trying to make sure that everything is categorized properly, but our bottom line should still be pretty close to the 88 million when we are done. We are still really analyzing everything that's coming into our budget to make sure that it's what it's supposed to be.
Gina, is the per employee benefits lower, or is that just the quantities of employees, the reason that the benefits
per is lower? The per is lower.
Really? With SEB, it's lower?
It's a tiny bit lower than it was last year. The legislature sets that each year, what the monthly premium amount is going to be, and for us to have to pay. And so that is what's driving that. It's a little bit less than they initially started out. Also, another driver that's bringing it down is the retirement contribution percentages. Those fluctuate a little bit every year. That one has gone down a little bit too. So that actually helps us out a little bit.
Okay.
For 1 year. It changes every year. And they've got all kinds of, I forget what you call them, people that look at the statistics that determine.
Actuaries.
Yes, thank you. So materials, supplies, and other costs. This is a picture that's just required for us to present to you. It basically says that the materials, supplies, and other costs, which we call MSOC, is the allocation from the state is less than what we are budgeting that we need to spend in regular instruction, ALE, our dropout re-engagement program, and our district support programs. Those are considered what is the basic pot of state funding. And so we're required to show this picture, and it shows the state is giving us less than what we expect that we need. And now here's our multi-year, 4-year budget summary. As part of your board docs plate, we have attached what's called the F195F, and that is a fairly new requirement for school districts in the Washington state to prepare not only next year's budget, but a 4-year multi-year budget summary. So this is what we are looking at for our school district. And this, you see our first year, the 21-22, with enrollment fairly steady to what we have now, we are going to be down to our minimum fund balance of ending fund balance of 7.8 million. And we'll look at that up against the target of what our minimum fund balance needs to be in the next slide. But what I also want to show you here is that given this trajectory, we do need to make future year reductions, or will need to make future year reductions. This is the year after next. And I hope that there will be some changes that will change that picture. But we've been talking about needing to have reductions in our future years. And now I'm really showing it in red so that it's very clear going forward that this is what we're looking at if enrollment comes in at 5265 and in the range of 5475 next year, in the range. That picture can change if our enrollment increases drastically for next year. That would help us a lot.
And Gina, just to be clear, if it doesn't change, if these numbers stay the same, then I would take the ending fund balance, which is our board policy of 1 month's worth of spend, and subtract or add the negative, whichever you prefer, to the future reduction. And that would then become the ending fund balance in those years. Is that correct?
It would be here. Expenditures would be needing to be reduced by 4.5 to arrive at the 7.1.
Yes, or we could change our policy to dip into our minimum fund balance and not have 1 month's worth of money in the bank. We would have less than 1 month's worth of money in the bank, but it's not like we would be negative from a checking balance perspective.
Correct.
We would have less savings than our board policy articulates.
Yes, and if those kinds of things held true, we can also look at, because a year's reduction here actually impacts the future. So if we had to reduce by 2 million, say in 22-23, this 3.3 million reduction would be different. We wouldn't have to, it would already be reduced by some. Does that make sense?
And we would have additional revenue as well if in 21-22, instead of 2265, if more students came back. Say we were at 5,400 in September with kids coming back, then we would have additional revenue to put into the fund balance to cover future years of reductions.
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. That is our 4-year multi-year working forecast. This is the target, what our minimum fund balances would need to be to stay in alignment with the current board policy. Now, our board policy does talk about up here in our values, our board, and we've had multiple conversations about this. I'm looking for the spot that talks about fund balance. Okay. Invest in appropriate internal over financial operations, maintain compliance with board policy for minimum fund balance while also allowing for flexibility in times of emergency. So that's, we don't take dipping into fund balance lightly at all. And the board has expressed excellent financial management and support for those policies, while also being reasonable to look at, is there a time where we may need to think about that and consider going into it if we needed to. So those are our minimums, and that assumes expenditure reductions. And here again is a picture of what my forecast on the previous slide had us landing at for fund balance compared to what the minimum fund balance would be. And we're barely there. The red percentages indicates caution because it assumes we've made some reductions. If all the other factors held true, it assumes we made reductions in order to maintain that minimum fund balance. So,
Gina, when we have our first indication of what our estimates are for enrollment based off the budget? Like, when will we know we were wrong? Hopefully, when will we know we were wrong and that everybody's coming back? What date is that we will know?
First few days of September.
So by September 10th, September 1st, kindergarten enrollment August 20th. Like when?
Chris probably wants to speak up too. Eric, myself, cabinet every day sets a time we meet, and we have a special ask from our registrars and building people that are gathering that data. And we ask, they really have to step up. They work really hard to get the culmination of that information, 1 day's worth, so we get an idea. And we do every day for the next week or two. It's around, I'm not saying it right, but it's every day until we're kind of in the swing of it, so that we know where the kids are and we can make some adjustments and know what the kids, I mean, it's not necessarily for the revenue side. It's more about where are they and do we have kids, the right staffing for that? Are they taken care of? So
yeah, we start day one. The first day is, we've been monitoring the kindergarten registrations, and we have shared that along the way, how they're not quite there compared to other years, but they are more than what they were last year. Just they're still not at the spot we need them to be. But we're monitoring that now. And the first day of school, we will, and we only count those that are there. And the fourth day count, we can actually count if they've been there one of those 4 days. So we watch that very carefully. And then we keep monitoring and meet the rest of the days, because Gina's right. We want to make adjustments where we need to make adjustments. So.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So then we, what could change the future? We've been talking about that, the enrollment uncertainty, but also regionalization is affecting our revenues. It's stepping down. It was 18, then it was 17%, now going down to 16%. So we always talk about that. What are some of the variables affecting expenditures? The cost inflator or IPD for future years' salaries, any additional that we need based on what we come to agreement on with our teachers union, and demographics of staff experience can change over time. We haven't seen that. It's mostly stayed in the upper end. We have experienced veteran teachers, and salary negotiations, we said that already, but also increased operating costs with reopening of school after being closed due to COVID-19, just different ways of having to structure our operations and services. And that's all I have to say about general fund for now. If there are questions,
thank you.
Into our ASB fund. And this is a much more fun topic. This is a picture of our Arlington High School, and you guys can name it for me. It's our choir.
Flight.
Flight, that's right.
In the bubbles.
In the bubbles.
They look like popsicles.
COVID. In order to do this, and they were very creative. Our ASB fund summary, Our funds in this fund is supported by student activities and athletics. It's revenues that come primarily from student body fees, activity gate receipts, fundraising, and donations. But a very important premise of ASB funds is that they are student governed, and students are involved in the design of the budget, and student approval is required for use of ASB funds. So there's our ASB fund summary. We really don't have a lot of change in how that is being budgeted right now. They did have somewhat of a spend down a little bit because they couldn't do the fundraising that they would have done, and yet they did still have some activities and expenditures. So, sorry. Our ending fund balance is going to targeted to come in a little bit lower than we had initially budgeted. So that'll start us off in 21, 22 lower, but that's okay. They needed to spend down a little bit. Our debt service fund, this is where we manage the district's debt. Any bonds or non-voted bonds are managed and serviced out of this fund. So it's primarily for the principal and interest. The transfers, the primary sources of revenue now are, because we've paid off all of our voted bond debt, all that's left is non-voted debt. And so the transfers in are to make payments on non-voted debt. We have $116,000 that will come from the transportation vehicle fund for bus debt. And we have $2.2 million that will come as a transfer in out of capital projects and into debt service for payment on the levy projects that are being non-voted bond debt was issued to get those started.
Gina, do we know what our new, after we start paying this down, what our new ceiling will be? Like how close we are to our total amount of non-voted debt based off of our, whatever the property values are and et cetera. There's some kind of cap calculation that goes in to say how much non-voted debt can the district take on, and it changes based off of our property values.
I haven't taken a look at what that capacity is for our additional non-voted debt. I thought we got pretty close to it with the new non-voted debt. I can't recall for sure, but definitely it would change every year. And as we pay it down, it would have more capacity as well. But I don't know that answer.
All right.
That would probably be something that we can get that information.
Yeah, I would just be interested to see what our capacity is from non-voted debt, depending on what's going on with buses. I know we've not funding the buses as fast as we wanted to. We took out non-voted debt last time to do buses. It'd be nice to know, given I know we had to take on some stuff, obviously, with the capital projects levy. So I just like to kind of know what's our wiggle room in the non-voted debt area to solve some other problems. Specifically, like I said, if we wanted to do something with buses and take on a little bit more non-voted debt to do that.
Right. Yep. Okay. We'll make a note of that and come back with that in another presentation. We'll tag it on. Thank you. Okay, capital projects. You've heard from Brian today, but our capital projects fund is where we administer any long-term school construction and repair needs. And the resources that legally are required to come into the capital projects fund can't be spent on school operations. It has to be spent on things that are capital projects in nature, public works type projects. Isn't that a great picture of that cat there? The capital project summary that we have, this is just an initial main source of revenues coming in from capital levy taxes. The expenditures that we're budgeting for are those as projects as described in the capital levy. And you heard from Brian talking about those projects and the timing. And then the transfer out to the debt service fund is included here in the expenditures and transfers out, because we'll be making payment on the principal for the non-voted debt, principal and interest. And the interest is not coming from the capital levy taxes. It is coming from other sources of funds that reside within the capital projects fund. And now we get to talk about our buses, our transportation vehicle fund. And here we are. This is the sole sources of funds in this area come from the state depreciation schedule. So it's generated based on the buses that we do have that are on the state depreciation schedule. So money comes in here and then we're able to buy more buses. And it also includes the 300,000 that we've talked about, transfer in coming from the general fund to capital or transportation vehicle fund. And then the expenditure of funds, it gives us about $750,000 capacity to support purchase of additional buses. And I think Brian has said he's ready to get 5 more of the big ones, the big buses. And then this budget also makes sure that we're tracking and keeping up with our transfers to the debt service fund for repayment of principal and interest on that previous set of non-voted bonds that we issued back in 17-18, where we were able to buy, I think it was about 10 buses, 8 to 10 buses. So that's that. And that is all. And talking about our next steps for the budget process, we've got our draft, and that is being submitted to the Northwest ESD. They are going to come back to us with some questions and some analytical review of it that they do. We'll be fine-tuning this draft. And then on August 9, we'll bring this back to you and go through it again and have a public hearing for public comment. Our draft is currently posted on our website, and it's by law, the RCW, we need to have our budget approved by August 31st. And then we will submit that to OSPI, and they will log it and make sure that we're in compliance with what we're supposed to do there. So there's our 21-22 budget briefing, and I'm happy to consider any other questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, Gina. You've answered all of my questions that I have written down here. I'm just checking them off as you go. So thank you for such a thorough and excellent report.
Thank you. We'll be back.
Yeah, always. All right, moving on to item J, Conflict of Interest Annual Report, Policy 1610, and that's for Dr. Sweeting to talk to us about.
Good evening again. Board Policy 1610 requires me as superintendent to maintain a log and annually report to the board any contracts that could be perceived as a conflict of interest. And I will report to you at this time, there are no known contracts that could be conceived or perceived as a conflict of interest. There was attached to this board agenda item listing or the log that we keep in my office that reports all of those times when a board member abstains because of a potential conflict of interest for maybe an item that is being voted on. So since last July for this year, there are 5 that are listed. And so we ensure and make sure that those items that are abstained from are listed. And that's what I have for you tonight.
Chris, until this policy comes up for renewal and approval, and we did that a year ago, so until it comes up again, I would like to request a notation be placed on this policy. So when it does come up for review, we would just have a note that we could look at when it does come up. And I would like, I'm going to suggest an additional sentence be added to the end of the policy to read, if an abstention occurs when a vote has been called, an explanation for abstaining will be provided. And if we could just put that, attach that to that policy, so when it does come up for review and renewal, that's
point of order, if you don't mind. Point of order.
Yes, Mike?
Oh, yeah. You know, President Fay, you can't just arbitrarily add language to a policy.
I'm not doing that, Mike. I'm not doing that.
It sounded like you were suggesting that.
No. What I'm suggesting is that we look at that suggestion when it does come up for renewal. So in lieu of it being brought up again, I'd like that in the policy so we could remember to discuss that when it does come up for renewal.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification. I misunderstood.
Yep, and so with that, we'll move on to item K. Resolution 2109, authorizing newly elected board members' attendance at WASDA conferences. And that goes to Dr. Sweeting.
So next November, there is the WASDA annual conference that will take place in Bellevue, and it alternates one year in Bellevue, the next year in Spokane. And this last year it was on Zoom, it was online. But we have registered the board to go to this conference, but we have members that we don't know who those members might be because of the election. So we can do a resolution to give authorization for the newly elected board members, who they may be, can attend this conference. And so this is and we've done this in the past, approved a resolution for this, I believe. And so I'm asking the board tonight to approve this so that we can make sure that we are doing this legally and that there's not a question about the new board members and another thing is that the new board members will not be sworn in until December. So this is using taxpayer money for them to go to a conference before they've been sworn in. So questions about this? The resolution 2109 is attached, and it just describes briefly what I've just stated about what the purpose of this resolution, just giving authority and authorizing that they can attend and public money can be used for their registration and attendance at that meeting before they're sworn in.
There don't seem to be any questions, so could I have a motion to authorize Resolution 2109, newly elected board members' attendance at WASDA conference?
I make a motion. Oh, go ahead, Mary, go ahead.
I move that the board approves Resolution 2109, authorizing newly elected board members' attendance at the WASDA annual conference in November 2021.
I second.
Thank you. It's been motioned and seconded to authorize newly elected board members' attendance at WASDA conferences for the upcoming conference in November. Madam Secretary?
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levesque,
Aye.
Director Ray. Director Ray.
Sorry, aye.
No problem. Director Rossin,
Aye.
President Fay.
Aye. Thank you. We'll move right on to item L, second reading adoption of policies 3112 and 3241 and deletion of policy 3200. And Dr. Sweeting.
So this is the second reading for these policies. 3112 is new, it's a brand new, and it's social emotional climate. I will say that we've looked at this already, we've discussed it. There were a few changes that were recommended that have been made to the policy from the first reading. You can see those highlighted in yellow. So those are there. And there have been no other suggestions as far as changes. So that's 3112. And moving on to 3241 is a copy of student discipline, or is a student discipline. And there also with this one at first reading, there were a couple of changes that were noted and made, and they are on page, let's see if you can scroll down, they're highlighted also in yellow. They are about the third page, maybe the third page, I believe. Maybe fourth page, just before application. There we go. So the changes that were requested are highlighted there. The added bullet was provide access to professional development in and allocate resources to restorative justice, class meeting circles, and problem solving circles. And then the next one was that we would hear, the board would hear results on these efforts. So those were the things that were added. And then finally, the next one, as you've heard, 3200 is up for deletion because the items, the information in this has been incorporated into other policies. So there you go. And you may take, a motion can be made to approve all three of these at once, if the board so chooses.
Are there any questions? Nope, our comments, great, then let's go ahead and I'm going to ask for a motion to approve for adoption policies 3112, 3241, and deletion of 3200.
I'll move that we approve policies 3112, 3241, and remove 3200.
I second.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been motioned and seconded to approve, to adopt policies 3112, 3214, and delete 3200 policy. Madam Secretary.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levesque,
Aye.
Director Ray,
Aye.
Director Rossin,
Aye.
President Fay.
Aye. And the last item on our new business agenda is item M, second reading adoption of policy 4300. And again, to Dr. Sweeting.
So the 4300, it's a new policy limiting immigration enforcement in schools. And at the first reading, there was one word change that was suggested. That's in that, you can see that highlighted in yellow. One board member, I believe Director Ray, had noted some concerns with the policy, but it's here for consideration for approval, separate from the other policies that we just approved. And I will say that there is this particular item could be adjusted in the future because I know that there is work being done right now to make some consideration of some adjustments, but we do not know when that would take place. And this is, WASDA has provided this sample or this model policy for us to consider adopting. So what questions or thoughts?
The only change was the word lining out applicably and just keeping relevance.
Right. We just wanted a different, I believe President Fay wanted a different word that might be easier to say and understood. You know?
Okay, so it says relevance of policies to immigration enforcement.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
That the content of this is really that you can see in this first bullet that we're going to adhere to all requirements of federal and state law when it comes to immigration. Our first primary purpose as a school system is to educate students, but we do need to comply with state law. We'll make sure that when there's legal requirements to provide access, that that there is legal requirements that are presented to us, that they are there. So basically that's it. It's ensuring that we can provide appropriate access when it's legally presented to us.
Yeah, I think just in general, if we're just having some general discussion on it, I just have a lot of doubts and questions about the need for this policy. Certainly we would comply with all federal and state laws without this policy. So I just feel it is not really relevant to our needs at this time and doesn't enhance in any way our educational ability. So I will not be supporting the adoption of this policy.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? So with that, I'm requesting a motion for the adoption of policy 4300.
I move that we adopt policy 4300.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been motioned and seconded to adopt policy 4300. Madam Secretary, call for a vote, please.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Levesque,
Aye.
Director Ray,
I'll be a nay.
Director Rossin,
Aye.
President Fay.
Aye. Thank you. And with that, we are done with new business and we'll move on to informational items. And we'll begin with the superintendent's report.
I'd like to say that in addition to summer school going on, we have been very busy. I mean, staff have been trying to take some time for vacation and time to renew and rest, but there's a lot going on. We have a lot of hiring that we're trying to make happen. And so each department's been busy trying to find the best people to bring on board to our team. One of the other things that's happening, and I know that President Fay saw this today, is that we have been doing some major moving around at the district office. And if you were to come to the board room right now, you wouldn't be able to hardly walk in it because it's filled with things that are displaced right now. And we will get those out of there as soon as we can. So, I know the board has stated that they want to have the board meetings in person beginning in September. So we need to make that happen. But the custodial staff, the maintenance staff, the ground staff, they have been incredibly amazing during this summer. They have moved so much furniture and they've moved it out and then they've had to move it back in. They've shampooed the carpets, they painted walls. They have done amazing things. And so I just wanted to publicly thank them and to let the board know that they are really taking care of us during this summer. And the last thing I want to share is that soon you will receive in your mailboxes, and as well as every community member in Arlington, the Summer Our Schools publication. And that publication will honor and highlight our students who have things that they have awards for, and that graduations and moving from 8th grade to 9th grade, and just all of the things that we are excited for and celebrate the accomplishments of our students. So that'll be in your mailbox fairly soon, the next couple weeks. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeting. And we'll move on to item B, legislative update and discussion, and that goes to Mr. Mark Rawson.
Thank you. We had an all-day meeting. It was kind of mostly in the afternoon last week. It was very interesting. Lots to learn, lots of changes going on. Obviously, I won't be continuing on the board, so I'm looking to transition all of my roles to someone else. DA1 will be looking for a brand new resolutions committee or permanent position committee member. DA1 has 2 legislative reps and 1 resolution rep, and I'm the resolution rep. So if anyone's interested, please let me know. And that's it. Not too much going on right now other than kind of prepping for next year and our perennial run at fixing the prototypical model. A little bit of it got fixed this year with more funds for mental health, but obviously we're still $6 billion short in funding the prototypical model for what it needs to be based off of the study that was done. So we'll see what the state continues to make progress on the prototypical model. So there's a lot of passion behind trying to continue the fight. And so we'll see how that goes. That's it.
Thank you, Mark Rawson. And I'll move on. Sherry, do you have anything you'd like to add? Oh, I'm sorry. No. Let me pause just for a minute. Thank you, Mr. Rawson. We're going to move on to our last item for this meeting, which is comments from board members. And I'll turn first to Sherry. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Just that what I'm doing right now is I'm working with a nonprofit in Mount Vernon for 5 weeks. And in my testing I did with students last week, they're going into 2nd and 3rd grade. And for literacy and math, I'm hoping that this population, which represents the low income group, that this is not representative of the rest of our country, because I feel if it is, we are in for a lot of work ahead. But I have a feeling our staff are kind of prepared for that. I love these kids. I really want to make some progress in the short time I have with them. but it just makes me feel how much everybody says we don't want to talk about loss, but it just, we need to do more, we need to do better, and we need to do often. So yeah, I'm really excited about the year, but I am also, like Mark said, about having more cell activities and money for mental health. I think that's going to be good. I will say though, that this group of kids coming from 5 different districts, 5 districts in one building in Mount Vernon, they are a happy bunch and they're very congenial. So that is very inspiring for me. So wish me luck. And I'm learning a lot on just what this looks like and kind of that crunch of getting some learning in over the summer.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And Mike, is there anything you'd like to add? Nope. And Mary, anything you'd like to add?
I want to share that my high school student did summer school and finished a week early and was able to retrieve 2 classes. So we're pretty excited and happy about that. Optimistic that there's growth and learning on the horizon.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks for that update. Mark, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. Other than I did get my child's final transcripts from EVCC, and she's completed her first year at Linfield from a semester credits perspective. So fabulous that we offer college in the high school and can get credits along the way toward college diploma during high school. So I think that's very impressive. Not just for my daughter, but just the fact that our district offers it.
It is indeed. Thank you, Mark. The only thing I'd like to add after hearing that report about needing a new track is I was at the track meet in Arlington that was a community sponsored one over the weekend. And for needing, I just want to say, not only was the track meet outstanding and so well coordinated and done, and we had a lot of high school kids on board who were coaches and mentors for these kids. It was wonderful event. It was a numerous day event, but Arlington School District has done an excellent job of maintaining that track. So yes, I heard the report that it needs to be resurfaced, but well done, because the track looked great. And I know that Brian Lewis, who's in charge of operations, does an outstanding job. Thank you, Brian Lewis. It looked great. So our next meeting, we'll have 2 meetings in August, and I don't have, for the first time since July, we only had 1, and I don't have the dates in front of me. I don't have a calendar. Mark, is yours there? Can you tell me dates in August?
In August, the first one is August 9th.
Thank you. Thank you. And then we'll be adjourning tonight to a special meeting, and we'll be hoping that all of us will make that transfer easily. So all I need right now is a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Thank you. It's been motioned and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Madam Secretary?
Director Kelly?
Aye.
Director Levesque?
Aye.
Director Ray?
Aye.
Director Rosson?
Aye.
President Fay?
Aye. See you soon.